What happens when a man rejected by a hotel because of his race decides to return not just for revenge, but to teach a lesson that the world will never forget? This is the story of one billionaire who turned the tables on injustice in the most shocking way possible. In a world where racism still lingers in the most unexpected places, one man faced a choice to accept humiliation or to fight back with unimaginable power. And that choice, it shocked the world. What happens next will change how you think about justice, revenge, and the power of a single person to create a ripple of change. In this video, you'll learn about a billionaire's extraordinary journey from rejection to revenge. But this isn't just any story. Along the way, we'll uncover lesser-known details that will leave you questioning how deep this injustice runs in society and how the victim turned the tables in a way that no one saw coming. Stick around till the end because the final twist, it's one that will leave you speechless. Are you ready to see what true power looks like? Let's dive into the story of a man who didn't just fight back, he changed the game forever. In a world where racism still exists, this story begins in a luxury hotel, one that was supposed to serve anyone except him. This hotel prided itself on being a symbol of exclusivity, catering to the rich and powerful. But on one fateful day, it would make a choice that would alter its reputation forever. A black billionaire who had worked tirelessly to build his empire walks through the doors ready to check in. The kind of man who could buy the hotel outright if he wanted to. Yet as he approaches the front desk, something unexpected happens. The staff looks at him with a cold, dismissive air. They tell him there's no room available despite the hotel being half empty. It's clear from their tone and body language that this wasn't just about availability. The man, stunned, asks if there's a mistake, but the staff doesn't budge. He's told to leave. His presence is unwelcome. The reason, his race. He's being rejected simply because of who he is. The humiliation is palpable. The billionaire stands there for a moment, feeling the weight of the discrimination bearing down on him. It's hard to comprehend, especially for someone who's used to being in control, used to power, respect, and recognition. But in this moment, none of that matters. Anger starts to build, not just for himself, but for every person who's ever been turned away, ignored, or treated unfairly simply because of their skin color. The disbelief in his eyes is clear. This wasn't supposed to happen, not in this day and age. His mind races, thinking about all he's achieved, all he's worked for, only to be met with something so simple yet so hurtful: rejection. And worse, the cold, impersonal way it was done. As he turns to walk away, the weight of the situation lingers. This wasn't just a personal affront. It was a reminder that racism, no matter how hidden, still exists in the most unexpected places. But little did they know this would not be the last time they saw him. The man stands there for a moment, staring at the hotel staff, feeling the sting of rejection. He could feel the anger rising within him, the urge to lash out. After all, who wouldn't want to scream, to demand an explanation, to fight back in that moment? He had every right to be furious, every right to confront the staff, to cause a scene, to make them understand just how wrong they were. But as the anger burned inside, something inside him shifted. He didn't move to yell, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he took a deep breath and looked around the hotel lobby. The opulence, the luxury, it all felt so hollow now. In that brief moment of calm, he realized something. Fighting in that moment wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't change the mindset of the people who ran this place, or the ones who allowed such things to happen in the first place. He could have walked away in defeat, but that wasn't in his nature. He knew he was capable of more. He could have let his frustration guide him, but he understood that real change didn't come from a single outburst. It came from something bigger, something that would send a message. His mind began to turn, and as he left the hotel, the seeds of a plan started to form. This was not the end. It wasn't the closure he had hoped for, but it was the beginning of something much bigger. He wasn't just going to be another person turned away. He wasn't going to let his story end as a simple act of injustice. He would make sure they would remember his name, and they would remember the consequences of their actions. The next day, the billionaire walked through those same doors. But this time, he wasn't a guest. He wasn't here to check in or to beg for a room. He was here to reclaim what was his, to show that the rejection he faced was not the end of the story. As he stepped into the lobby, the staff who had turned him away the day before barely recognized him at first. They had no idea who he was, no idea that the man who had been dismissed in such a cold, dismissive manner was about to change everything. The air in the hotel seemed to shift, as though the entire building was holding its breath. There was no anger in his eyes, no signs of the fury that would have erupted the day before. Instead, there was something much more powerful: calm, confidence, control. The kind of power that only comes from knowing you hold the cards, and right now, he was the one with all the power. The hotel staff still didn't know what was happening, but the billionaire didn't need to explain. He didn't need to say a word. His presence spoke volumes. As he walked past the front desk, he didn't even glance at the people who had turned him away. It was as if they didn't exist anymore. He was on a different path now, one that would make them regret their actions. The world would soon witness the most unexpected turn of events. What they didn't know was that his revenge wasn't in anger, it was in power. This wasn't about getting back at the staff for their personal insult. This wasn't about a petty act of retribution. It was about showing the world that power, when wielded the right way, could turn the tables in an instant. And that's exactly what was about to happen. The billionaire didn't waste any time. By the next morning, the hotel staff had no idea what was coming. Behind the scenes, the man had already moved quickly and decisively. The luxury hotel, the same one that had turned him away, was now under his ownership. It wasn't just a simple transaction. This was a message. He didn't need to announce his arrival with grand gestures. His power spoke for itself. Within hours, the paperwork was signed, and the ownership officially transferred. The hotel, once a symbol of exclusivity and elitism, now belonged to the very person they had tried to humiliate. But he didn't stop there. With a calm determination, he set in motion a series of changes that would shake the hotel to its core. The staff members who had dismissed him the day before, they were the first to feel the consequences of their actions. He made sure they were called into meetings one by one, where they were informed of the new management. They were no longer in charge. In fact, none of them would remain employed in the hotel. The billionaire's plan was far from cruel. He wanted them to understand something, a lesson that would stick with them for the rest of their careers. He wanted to make it clear that racism, no matter how subtly it's practiced, would never be tolerated again. He wasn't just punishing them, he was teaching them a hard, unforgettable lesson. They would never forget the man they had rejected, the billionaire who had taken control of their world with grace and power. Behind the scenes, the billionaire also revamped the hotel's policies, implementing diversity training and creating a more inclusive culture that was centered on respect. He ensured that no one would ever again walk through the doors of his hotel only to be turned away because of the color of their skin. The very institution that had once shut him out would now serve as a beacon of change, a reminder to all who passed through its doors of the consequences of discrimination. And as for the staff who had wronged him, they would live with the knowledge that they were the ones who had unknowingly sealed their fate. They had rejected a billionaire once, but they would never forget the man who became their boss. News of the billionaire's bold move spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of people across the globe. The story wasn't just about one man reclaiming power. It was about something much larger. It was a wake-up call to the world that racism, no matter how subtle or ingrained, would no longer be tolerated. Within hours, social media was buzzing, news outlets were reporting, and people couldn't stop talking about what had just happened. Headlines screamed about the billionaire who turned his rejection into a powerful statement. People from all walks of life, from every corner of the world, began to ask themselves, how deep does this problem really run? How many others had faced similar discrimination but never had the means to fight back? The event sparked a larger conversation about race privilege and power. For many, it was a stark reminder that despite the progress we think we've made, discrimination is still alive and well in places we least expect. The billionaire's actions had brought this uncomfortable truth to the forefront, and now people everywhere were forced to confront it. This wasn't just a story about one man getting revenge. It was about creating a ripple effect that challenged society to look in the mirror and question its own biases. From boardrooms to classrooms, from social circles to businesses, the world began to realize that if a man with such power could be rejected because of his skin color, then how many others were suffering in silence? It ignited conversations about fairness, equality, and the need for change, conversations that had been silenced for far too long. As the shockwaves of this event continued to spread, the billionaire's message was clear. No longer would society turn a blind eye to injustice. The impact of his actions was far-reaching, and it sparked a movement that could no longer be ignored. People everywhere, whether they had experienced racism firsthand or not, began to reflect on how these issues played out in their own communities and how they too could stand up and demand better. Sometimes revenge isn't just about personal satisfaction. It's not about getting back at those who wronged you in the heat of the moment. It's about something much bigger. This billionaire's actions taught the world a powerful lesson. When power is used right, it can force the world to pay attention. His revenge wasn't fueled by anger or the need to humiliate those who rejected him. Instead, it was driven by a desire to create lasting change, to ensure that no one else would suffer the same injustice he had endured. By taking control of the hotel and transforming it into a symbol of inclusivity and equality, the billionaire didn't just win back his dignity. He set a precedent. His actions demonstrated that real change doesn't come from fleeting moments of rage. It comes from harnessing power and using it to shift societal norms. He understood that with the right tools and the right mindset, a single person could make a difference. A single act could spark a movement. This man's revenge wasn't just a personal victory. It was a victory for justice. It was proof that sometimes the greatest act of defiance isn't to lash out, but to change the system from within. By reclaiming his power and using it to right a wrong, he taught the world that even the most deeply ingrained prejudices can be challenged. And when people stand up, use their power wisely, and demand justice, the world has no choice but to listen. In the end, the hotel learned a valuable lesson, but so did the world. This story serves as a powerful reminder: never underestimate the power of someone who has been wronged. The billionaire's actions prove that true strength isn't always in fighting back with anger. It's in using your power to create real, lasting change. What started as a personal rejection turned into a global statement challenging everyone to rethink how they handle injustice. Now, we want to hear from you. What would you have done in his shoes? Would you have fought back in the same way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Please note that this story is a work of fiction and is created purely for entertainment purposes. Thanks for watching.